name's Bolden. I teach at the University of Louisiana Monroe, and I'm here today to talk to you about the slow etude for this year's LMEA horn auditions. This is going to be set 2, and it's kind of an exciting time because these are brand new etudes for the 2021-2022 school year. So the first thing I would suggest is that you number your measures. I've done that. There should be 71 if I've done this correctly. So I'm going to be referencing measure numbers as I talk to you a little bit about some strategies for learning this etude. It's really quite nice. There's a lot of really lyrical lines to sing through, so that's really the first thing, is to just keep your air moving, never let the air stop. There's a couple of places where there are rests, but they're in the middle of a phrase, so you really shouldn't let those rests kill the direction of the phrase. One thing that I think would really be helpful is for you to take phrase by phrase and actually play all of the rhythms and outline the phrase on a single note. So I'll demonstrate that at the beginning. So here's the first 4 bars as I would phrase them, but on a single note, a second line G. Really exciting, right? So what that does is it allows you to focus on just the rhythm and just the articulations without worrying about getting all of the shape of the melody there. And I would suggest doing that with anything that's difficult for you in terms of making the phrase make sense. All of this is very predictable. The music is standard 4-bar phrasing. There's one place right before the opening material returns. This is at measure 32 into 33. It's kind of nice to do a little slowdown there, not a bunch because it's not marked in the music, but just a little bit of relaxation, and then into tempo at measure 33 for the return of the opening. If you know your music theory, you'll know that this is in 3 sections. The first section from measure 1 up to measure 16 is in the key of G major for horn. And then the next section, starting at measure 17 through measure 31, is in the key of E minor, which is the relative minor of G major. And then it's back to G major from there until the end. The reason I'm telling you this is it's very helpful to put on a tonic drone. So for those first 16 bars, you'll have your metronome or tuner play a constant concert C. And then from measure 17 to measure 32, you can have your metronome or tuner, what have you, play a constant concert A, and then go back to concert C from 33 until the end. That's a really good way to work on intonation and making sure all of the notes are exactly where they should be. A couple of stylistic things. Really feel the downbeats. The composer has done a lot of favors for you in giving you accents on the downbeats. Be careful that you don't really smack those. This is not the kind of music where the accents and marcatos really need to be, really hit hard. They're more of a subtle push. Now that being said, follow your air. Don't hold back on the air, especially when the line goes up. Really follow your air all the way to the ends of the phrases. This etude could be kind of a challenge endurance-wise to play the whole thing beginning to end. So practice it in sections and then gradually build up your endurance until you're able to play it all the way through, beginning to end, with no stops. Okay, so here are some tips for the LMEA Set 2 Kopprasch Etude, the Allegro Moderato. So first things first, go ahead and number your measures. You should have 58 if I've done my numbering correctly. One of the ways I like to practice anything Kopprasch or any kind of extended etude is to divide it up into sections. So this piece is laid out really easily into several different sections. So the first one is measures 1 to 12. Then measures 13 through 23, 24 through 37, and then 38 to the end. And sort of like any big project, you know, if you think of it like a meal, you're not going to just eat the entire meal in one big gulp. You're going to divide it up into manageable bites. So I think that's one great way to practice this. So at any given practice session, rather than playing all the way through the etude just a bunch of times and kind of haphazardly putting it together, really work on refining each section. One of the best things you can do with Kopprasch is to change the articulation. So I actually like to practice each of those sections that I just named for you with a bunch of different articulations. So for instance, at the beginning, the first section, measures 1 to 12, you could practice it with this articulation, all slurred. Then you can do slur 2, slur 2. Then you can do tongue 2, slur 2, which is, I think, probably one of the more difficult ways, but it's actually really good for training your fingers, air, and tongue, and embouchure to really produce this piece consistently. So reverse of what's actually written. And if that really just ties me up in knots, but it's such a good way to really train yourself without having to repeat it just over and over and over kind of mindlessly. And you can do all different kinds. You could do all tongue, you could do tongue 1, slur 2, tongue 1 like this. You could practice it down an octave, you could practice it in different transpositions. Really, you're only limited by your creativity in terms of how you practice this. Couple of real practical hints that I've played this piece many, many times over the years. Any serious horn players played Kopprasch countless numbers of times. Try to stay relaxed. My left hand, I just have to remember, you know, it's the same pattern over and over and over, and if you play the whole etude, it's easy for that left hand to tighten up. So just try to relax your left hand as much as you can. In conjunction with that, keep the tonguing nice and loose and lots of air behind the tongue so that the tongue doesn't lock up, blow through every single articulation. Another thing, don't go too fast. This is Allegro Moderato, so I would say tempo marking anywhere between quarter note equals 88 or so to about 96 or 100. If you get much faster than 100, I think you're gonna maybe run into some problems with clarity and consistency, but that's kind of a judgment call on your part. The low Gs, the pedal ones, 1 and 3 is the fingering. The tendency on those is for them to be sharp. So drop the jaw, firm upper lip. You may want to cover with your right hand just a little bit to keep that note nice and in tune so that it's not noticeably sharp. You can take a little bit of a retard in the last measure if you need to. That helps me to just kind of set that low C so you don't get an air ball on it, so you don't whiff it. Observe the dynamics as literally as you possibly can. Don't just blow past those crescendos and decrescendos. Really try to do them. Try to make the pianos nice and soft so that there's a distinct difference between the pianos, mezzo fortes, and fortes.